concerns are growing over how the U.S. will be able to contain the Taliban and monitor terrorist organizations in the Middle East after American troops leave Afghanistan. Joining us now to discuss is Will Ruger, Afghanistan war veteran and vice president and for the research of policy at the Charles Koch Institute, along with Dan Caldwell, senior advisor for Concerned Veterans for America. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having us.
Of course. Now, the first phase of the withdrawal process started May 1st. Top Pentagon officials say that the Taliban are already advancing. And now the defense secretary has ordered more forces to the region to protect American troops. So, Will, why is that, or why would that be?
Well, when we're doing a retrograde, it's really important that we make sure that our troops are safe as they're coming home. The key here, though, is that we need to make sure that there's a good reason for us leaving. It's in our national interest. And so when we put these troops in forward, we need to make sure that they're only there to be protecting our soldiers and sailors and airmen and Marines as they're coming back. And that's a really responsible way to do it. But again, we wouldn't have been in this issue. We wouldn't have had this issue if we had stuck by President Trump's withdrawal deal, which we were out of there by May 1st altogether. And so in some ways, we're having to make do with the kind of expanded schedule here. And hopefully our troops will remain safe. And I think the Taliban will have an interest in not targeting American troops as they leave because they don't want the United States to come back in the way we have before and punish them severely, which is one of the war aims that we had originally after 9/11.
No, an interesting point to bring back up. Now, Afghanistan, as you know, shares a border with some of America's biggest adversaries, Iran in the west, China to the east. So once the U.S. leaves, do you believe these countries will see an opportunity to infiltrate? Dan, I'll direct that to you.
Well, actually, I think that us leaving benefits us because those countries will then be forced to devote more resources to containing any problems that may threaten them, whether it's terrorism, whether it's instability in the country that could lead to more refugees. They would have to devote more resources to dealing with Afghanistan as opposed to putting them towards activities that are more threatening to us. So I don't buy this argument that leaving Afghanistan empowers our adversaries. In fact, we share many of the same enemies in Afghanistan that countries like Iran and China have. They are not allies of the Taliban, and they don't want to see Afghanistan become a staging ground for groups like Al-Qaeda, which could pose problems for them as well. So ultimately, us leaving will force those countries to devote more of their focus to ensuring that Afghanistan remains stable as opposed to doing things that may pose more problems for us in the long run.
Will, do you agree with that assessment that they will not take this as an opportunity to infiltrate?
Again, I think that the question is what's in America's interests here? And America has an interest in not spending resources, blood and treasure, in strategic backwaters. The only thing we need in Afghanistan is to make sure it isn't a safe harbor for terrorists like Al-Qaeda. But we can do that using over-the-horizon capabilities to hit targets when they have the intent and capability to harm us. We don't need a permanent troop presence. And in fact, other countries may want the United States to stay there because it's really expensive. It bleeds our treasury, right? And it adds to our debt and deficits, and it ties our forces down as opposed to pivoting to the issue with the rise of China, where we could use our resources much better to contain what is really a more important threat to the United States, which isn't saying that we need to have Cold War II, but we really should be paying attention to countries that have existential threats to us and then deal with terrorism as it comes up using special forces capabilities, intelligence, policing, and over-the-horizon technologies.
Okay, former commander of U.S. troops in Afghanistan, David Petraeus, warns against this military withdrawal. Let's take a listen real quick.
And the result could be, not only does the Taliban get what it wants without giving anything up, it wants us to be gone, having already gotten what it also wanted previously under the previous administration, which was to get its fighters out of detention. And they are on the offensive now in the southern part of the country, in Helmand province, around the capital there. Security has eroded previously in other areas. And if we have no bases on the ground there at the end of our withdrawal, it is a very long flight from the Gulf states even for our fast movers, much less our very slow moving drones.
Dan, what were your thoughts on that take?
I think General Petraeus is wrong, and quite frankly, I don't think he has a lot of credibility on Afghanistan. As head of CENTCOM and as commander of U.S. forces in Afghanistan, the strategies that he pursued ultimately failed to change the course of the war. And in effect, what he is advocating is to continue to muddle along, to continue to sacrifice American blood and treasure in pursuit of objectives that are unattainable and frankly won't make us safer. So I hope that President Biden continues to ignore people like General Petraeus, who've been wrong on Afghanistan for years, just like President Trump did, and ultimately continue the full withdrawal of American forces from Afghanistan.
Now, despite concerns that the Taliban will overrun the Afghan government once the U.S. is gone, and despite how you two have expressed how you feel about it, a new poll conducted by YouGov for the Charles Koch Institute finds about 2/3 of Americans do support bringing U.S. troops home from Afghanistan by September. So, Will, I'll give you the last question here. What did you make of that survey?
I think it shows you that in this poll and many others, that the American public, including veterans and military households, support us leaving Afghanistan. They understand that we don't need to be continuing to send our young men and women overseas in Afghanistan for something really that we've already achieved, right? We attrited al-Qaeda, we punished the Taliban, and we killed Osama bin Laden. That's what we need to do in Afghanistan, not nation building and these kind of, I think, really kind of irresponsible approaches like you saw with General Petraeus, trying to rebuild and remake that country. And so I think that this poll shows that. And I'm really heartened that the public is supportive of President Trump's approach that was also supported by President Biden. And so we have a real transpartisan approach here in this country that's supported by the public. And unfortunately, there are some people at the Pentagon and in the foreign policy establishment that continue to buck what the people want and the wisdom that you saw that President Trump and President Biden, I think, both came to on this situation. So I'm glad that we're leaving, and I'm glad to see that the American public supports that approach.
All right, Will Ruger and Dan Caldwell, all the time we have for now. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.